Good afternoon. It's so good to have you with me again today. And I really have a wonderful guest with me today. I've had the privilege of just meeting Lewis Colbert, and we're going to talk about how God has used him. Lewis was born with a cleft foot. Is that correct?
Clubfoot.
Clubfoot. Okay. All right. And as a child, you had a tremendous amount of operations on your foot, and I want you to tell people what you went through even as a young boy. But anyway, he went on to be the punter.
I was a punter.
For Auburn University.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
ended up playing 4 years.
4 years.
In the NFL with the Kansas City.
That's correct. Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, and so we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about the book he's written. We're going to talk about all the wonderful things, and I really pray that this program is going to be the type program that no matter what you're facing today, that you can see by the power and grace of God and through His love, we can overcome those things, can't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We had the privilege of having you in our city the 12th of January at our Brother to Brother event, and you spoke there, and we've had so many men in the area talk about what a wonderful experience it was to have you here, how you related to them, and how God used you so mightily to touch their life. And I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for coming back to our community and just sharing what God has done in your life and, again, the things that you've had to overcome. So I just really want to turn the program, basically. I mean, I'm going to interject here, but I want you to tell your story just from birth, really, and tell us what you went through.
Well, it starts in August of 1963, and when I was born.
Yeah.
And at the time that I was born, the doctors just whisked me away into the other room. My mom was there by herself. My dad dropped her off at the hospital front door and went back home. So she was in the hospital by herself when I was born, and a few minutes passed, and then the doctor came back into the room and said, and I'll never forget the words what my mom told me, is that he said, "Francis, I've got some bad news. Your son's been born with club feet. One of them not so bad, but the other one is the worst I've ever seen."
Oh, wow.
Of course, my mom was a little frantic, asking questions, trying to figure out what's going on, and the doctor doing the best he could to explain it. But one of the other questions was asked is, was he going to be able to walk? And the doctor said, "I don't think so. I'll give him maybe 10% chance of walking.
Oh, my goodness.
But if he does walk, he'll always have a limp. May even have to have a cane or some kind of aid device to be able to get around." Then he went to describing my right foot, and it had been rotated 90 degrees. It had been folded in half, and then it had folded again at the ankle around to the back of my shin.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
And it basically, it looked like a fist. And it, right there at the ankles is the fist per se. Fortunately, it wasn't above the ankle. It was right at the ankle. So the next 5 years, I went through numerous operations, surgeries, procedures, casts, braces. This is one of my braces here, actually one of the last ones. That's the one that I learned to walk in.
Really?
Yeah, I could not walk because of the lack of strength and muscle development in my leg, and those bars gave me the support.
And so you were actually how old when you began walking?
I would. It's up to debate, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My mom says somewhere around 6. After the surgeries.
Okay.
Although there's a couple of attempts that I'd seen in pictures where I had a cast on my leg and I was trying to walk with the cast. But, I wasn't out of cast until I was going into my 5th year.
Oh, okay.
So
now, did you have cast on your other foot as well?
For the first couple of years I did. They were able to correct my left one through cast, and they would put me in a cast and turn my foot outwards until it straightened up. And pretty much my left leg is normal.
Fine. Yeah.
However, my right one today, is still, from the knee down, is half the size of my left one. My calf muscle is half the size of my left one. My foot is about a size and 3/4, size and a half smaller. And the flexibility is not there either. You know, it's a wonder and the grace of God that I was even able to walk, but then be able to take it into athletics and play baseball and play football. And
So as a young boy, you did play different sports?
Not with a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, okay.
The doctors really frowned on me trying to play. However, I was able to get into baseball. I had to play it even differently, running the bases and such, because I mean there just wasn't the strength. I wished I had a nickel for every time I was in a air cast or an ace bandage or you know, crutches. I mean, I turned my ankle and strained ligaments and things of that nature up till, I would say, the time I went to Auburn.
Now tell us about how that came about. And you actually hold a record, is that true?
I still hold some records for Auburn University.
Okay.
In punting.
Okay.
You know, it's a very act of God of how I got there, if you will. Divine intervention, numerous times, you know, and continuously.
Let me ask you something. We didn't talk about this before the program. Did you know the Lord at an early age, or is it something that you actually accepted the Lord later in life and now realize the divine intervention, or did you know it?
I did not know it at the time.
Okay. Most of us don't, do we?
Yeah, I guess with age came wisdom and understanding, and be able to see, you know, what really transpired. And everything that happened to me growing up in regards to my home life, my physical disability or handicap, to me, you know, I had blinders on and I was looking straight ahead, trying to for a better life, if you will.
Now, your daddy passed when you were about 5 years old.
He passed when I was 5 years old.
So you weren't walking by that time, were
No.
you? Okay. So we never saw that.
And you know, I could have walked earlier had I not been in cast.
Yeah.
However, those first 5 years, you know, there was cast after cast after cast after surgery. About every 18 months, I was having a surgery.
Bless your heart. Now, were you your mother's only child?
Nope, I had two older brothers.
Oh, okay.
Closest one 15 years older than I.
Oh, my goodness.
Which was one of the first. The name of my book is Lewis Covert, The Unlikeliest Auburn Tiger. And
yes, and we're going to tell you how you can get this book. I know you did book signings when you were here back in January.
Yes.
And we'll tell you how to get this book. We're going to have the website at the bottom of the screen. You'll see that. And so we want you to please get a hold of this book. I think it will encourage you, no matter what we're going through in life.
It doesn't matter. It's not. It's not an athletic book. It is a life book. Although athletic was my vehicle to be able to tell the story and to get the message out. You know, my biggest desire is to be able to make a difference and share it with a lot of young people that may be dealing with similar things, or maybe dealing with things that might be a little different, but they can relate to what I'm telling in the story. And you know, the title was a challenge for us, because that was one of the hang-ups for a few years in regards to writing the book, because I could never figure out what I wanted to put on it. And a few years ago, I had a brush with my own mortality with pneumonia. You know, it was a sobering event, should I say. And at that point, I said, it's time. We still struggled on the title, but whenever I went back and went through the years of what I went through and how it transpired, and you start really realizing what actually happened right before your eyes and had no idea. There was so many times that if something would have happened one way, or if it had happened differently, or not had happened at all, I would not be sitting here today. It starts with the fact that I was born 15 years later, after my brother. So I was a surprise then. You know, that day my dad come home to take my mom home from the hospital, and she informed him what had transpired, that I was born with a handicap. You know, his statement was then, well, Lewis is not coming home with us. So it started with a lot of tension in the household for the first few years.
Wow.
Of course, all the surgeries and the cast and the pain that was attached to it, because the cast, they didn't just put a cast on. They put cast on to correct.
Right. That's right.
So
So it was painful.
It was painful.
All I can relate to is braces, but I remember when they would even
when
just
they tighten them.
Oh my goodness, the pain, and so I can't imagine.
Well, just imagine if wearing casts that looks like they're on the wrong feet. Mm-hmm. They turned them, and then also on my right when they pulled it back to stretch the tendons and ligaments. There's a 12-inch scar on the back of my calf, and then there's a scar on the bottom of my foot, the length of the foot, where they had to break it in 3 different places, turn it around, and different surgeries of
Do
trying
you
to...
remember the pain? I mean, I guess that sounds...
I can remember the
some of it.
last one.
Yeah.
I can remember a little bit of the last one, but you know,
Thank goodness you don't remember.
my brother and mom tells me about the first few, and basically all I did was scream and holler. I guess that's where I got the loud voice from, because I get picked on about that today, that I talk loud.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the last one I beat the cast off, and they had to put the cast back on.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the doctor wasn't happy about that one either.
But all of that process led you to Auburn.
It did. Actually, I tried to play football 3 different times.
Oh, really?
8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade. All ending with the same result. I had to give it up. Each time it ended with a twisted ankle, a cast. I'm not a cast, but an air cast, braces, you know, be an ace bandage or taped up, a crutch. Mm-hmm. However, my 10th grade year, it ended a little worse than the other 2, and something popped when it happened, and I had to go see the doctor on that one. And
is that Dr. Elkins?
Yes.
I've been to Dr. Elkins. It was really funny that we both, but anyway, so,
Yeah.
and he really
he
wasn't
was
pleased.
not happy, and that's when he found out I was trying to play football.
Oh my goodness.
After being told
I can only
that
imagine.
After being told that I shouldn't be playing any contact sport whatsoever.
So you didn't play again until your senior year?
When I went back that day on crutches and an air cast, I had to talk to my high school coach, and I had to give it up.
Okay.
And at that point, though, I asked him, could I be a manager for the football team? You know, I was into baseball, and I'd been playing baseball and actually doing very well at it. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to be part of the football team because I had some other people that were friends of mine that were playing football. And so for 2 years, I was carrying water and chin straps and blocking dummies. And in those 2 years, I started picking up a football, waiting for practice to start, and punting the football back and forth on the football field for 2 years. And my senior year, one of the guys on the team said, hey, why don't you ask him if you can just punt? So I did. Fortunately, he gave me that opportunity, and I'll never forget it. I got a chance to meet with him while I was doing the book and talk to him, and you know, the statement he made to me, he goes, you know, we don't really do that. And this goes back into the, you know, the late 70s.
Yeah.
You know, you played football. You played a position. You didn't just punt like it or place kick like it is today. He said we don't really do that. But for somebody that wants to play football as bad as you do, we'll give it a try. So I ended up punting my first year playing football my senior year in high school, and I averaged over 42 yards and made all by city and all state.
So how did you get to Auburn then?
Well, I wasn't planning on going to Auburn. I had scholarship. I had scholarships for baseball. I mean, football was something that I did, but I love baseball. Mm-hmm. And of course, after my senior year of football, we're coming around to spring of '81 when I graduated, and it's baseball season. Mm-hmm. And I had opportunities for scholarships to play baseball. And ironically, the state championship game that I was pitching my senior year, about halfway through it, we're winning 1-0. And I go to throw one high and tight. It was the end of the inning, and my shoulder popped.
Oh my goodness. Oh, bless
And I was a pitcher. I was throwing, around 90 miles an hour.
Wow.
That's where I thought my life was headed, but the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yes, He does.
You never would I have thought that I'd have ended up at Auburn punting a football and then in the NFL.
I know.
This is a fork in the road that just really took me by surprise, and of course devastated me too.
Yeah.
Because to me my world just ended. They told me it was a torn rotator cuff.
Mm.
Ironically, 4 years ago, I took a fall off a horse and tore every ligament and tendon in my right shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
So while the doctor was repairing that,
To your surprise?
it was a huge surprise because this goes into some of the reasons for the name of that book. I'm laying in recovery, and anybody's had a surgery, you lay in recovery and you're droggy. And
That's right.
however, the doctor come in and said, did you ever injure that shoulder before? Yes, I did. I answered him a little slurry, probably, yeah, I tore my rotator cuff pitching. He goes, your rotator cuff isn't torn. Excuse me? I sat straight up in the bed.
Immediately sober from the
Dead sober.
anesthesia. Mm-hmm.
Dead sober. And he said, no, it was just a little old bursa sac. It torn and flipped open. I just put it back up, sewed it back up.
Oh my goodness. Changed your whole destiny.
But I took confidence in what people were telling me,
Absolutely.
and I knew it hurt really bad, so I really didn't think anything about it. But I went to Auburn to get an education.
Right.
I definitely wanted the education, and I wanted an opportunity to do more in life, and so I headed to Auburn. It was close by. Borrowed money, got grants. I did come from a family with money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in the auditorium for orientation the summer quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady that's giving us orientation, calls out my name, asks me was I in the auditorium. So I go down and I get a note from her that said Pat Dye wanted me to meet him or come see him at the Coliseum. And it's ironic how that even happened, because I wasn't recruited. I only played 1 year of football. And not to mention I had a handicap that I tried to hide, and did a very good job hiding it for many, many years. Because the emotional struggles I had over it are covered in the book too. And it was some challenging times dealing with it. You start asking the question, why me?
It's real easy to get into that, isn't it?
It's really easy,
and to just stay
especially as a youngster.
And waller in it, as we say in the South, just,
I did for many,
Yeah.
many years, and it's amazing the older you get, the wiser you get, or at least maybe understand things a little better.
Yeah.
Didn't realize how much I was struggling with it. And, all the things I cover in the book, there's a lot of it I'm still dealing with today and trying to overcome. But, I come to find out later how he even got a hold of my name. And, I was, my girlfriend at the time, I was at a family reunion, and her uncle, she had told her uncle about me punting a football. Ironically, her uncle and Pat Dye were acquaintances. He told Coach Dye, and of course it got a little exaggerated of actually, I was punting the ball 50, 60 yards, and sounded like I was 10 foot tall and could run a 3-flat 40. But
Yeah.
but anyway, that's how he found out about it. And if that isn't a divine intervention, I don't know
Yes.
what it is.
Yeah.
And there's many of those in the book, and it's like somebody just had me by the collar and said, "This is where you're going,
Isn't that
and this is
something?
how we're going."
Isn't that
and
something?
one day you're going to wake up and understand
That
every
it was
bit of
me.
this.
Yeah.
And, you know, 2 years ago I started waking up. It's just a remarkable feeling. But
so you went on and played for 4 years,
I
right?
met with Coach Dye and kind of set the record straight. And then I immediately went to the practice field afterwards, and there was 17 other kickers out there that year. That was fall of '81. And most of them were punters, because Al Del Greco was the place kicker at the time, and you know he had, you know, had his position surely locked. So there wasn't many of those out there, but the punters were just everywhere. And so I hung it out, but I'm telling you, there's many times I thought I was going to have to quit there too, because Coach Dye's off-season programs and his conditioning programs, his weightlifting programs, anybody that's an Auburn fan knows that they were legendary. And you know, I was still having problems with the running part, and having the endurance to be able to run. And you know, I remember still to this day sitting in the locker room after practices and just continuing to sit there until everybody left, just because I didn't want them to see me limping whenever I went to take a shower. But also I didn't want them to see the difference in my leg either, and start asking questions, because I didn't want to go through all that again. But I made it through the fall. And then we got into winter, and it was even worse because of the lifting and the running. But I stuck it out, as painful as it was. And then spring, I'd made it up to number 2, and the punter that had been the backup for the previous 3 years in the A-Day game broke his ankle, of all things.
Of all things.
A broke ankle got me in there. Whereas,
isn't that interesting? That a broken ankle got you where you needed to be.
It got me.
Have you ever really thought about that?
I didn't until I was doing the book. It could have been something else. I mean, it's just ironic. And when you start putting those things together and you start realizing that, you know, somebody's making these decisions without a doubt, and it just.
But it's about being at the right place, isn't it, Lou? I mean, really.
You have to. I mean, there's a lot of other things that have to happen. I mean, you know, you've got to put your effort, and you've got to work hard.
Right.
You got to have commitment, and you know, Coach Dye agreed to do the foreword for the book. And one of the things he used, the words he used to describe me is mental toughness. And you know, it's not easy to block out pain.
That's right. And we all, every person alive, I believe, and some of us certainly more than others, whether it's physical or mental, whether it's broken relation, whatever it is, we all have broken places in our life.
Absolutely.
And those things can defeat us, or we can use those things as a platform to go from. Into the things that God would have us to do. And so you went on and you set, again, records at Auburn.
Absolutely. I ended up being the first string punter and won a scholarship August of 1982. From that point, I went on to being the first 4-year starter as a punter, the first All-American punter at Auburn University, voted to the team of the century, first 100 years Auburn football. Voted team captain along with Bo Jackson my senior year.
How about that?
And Coach Dye, he told me, he goes, as long as I've been coaching, I have never seen a punter or kicker voted as a captain.
How about that?
So
it's been a blessing.
It has been a blessing. And then after that, you know, I got drafted in the 8th round, first punter taken in 1986 with Kansas City Chiefs.
Let me tell you, God is awesome, isn't it?
Yes, He is.
He is awesome.
Yes,
and I'm glad that, Lewis, again, I don't know how long, but I'm so glad that you know Him now. And I'm so glad that looking at your life, you can see God's handiwork so many times. You know, we've heard the story about the tapestry, and behind the tapestry is so many strings and things that make no sense. But when we see the front of it, it's a beautiful picture. And that's truly what's happened in your life.
And this is probably the hardest thing out of everything I've had to deal with, doing this book was the hardest thing I have ever done.
Mm-hmm.
However, it was the most educating thing I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
To see those things and realize it, and be able to go back and go, this is really happening, and this is why it's happening, and this is who's doing it, and it's just amazing because, you know, if somebody would have asked me, and if I could have answered at 5 years old, you think this would be happening? Oh no.
Yeah.
Or if they'd asked me at 10.
And you
No.
know what? God, and we've only got 2 minutes. Can you believe how fast 30 minutes goes? But God can heal us, totally heal us, miraculously heal us. It happens. But many, many times He chooses to use us miraculously with what we have, to be an overcomer. Wouldn't you say that to maybe those that are watching today? I mean, I believe God heals today just like He's always healed. He said, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. But He also used situations to change other people's lives, won't He?
And that is true. as-
Excuse me.
That is remarkably true, and you know, my efforts now is to take this information, be able to present it to as many people as I can, to make a difference, to change things that you know, people are struggling with. You know, I've started doing motivational speaking.
And so you're out. I mean, if they want to get in touch with you, you want them to go to your website,
Yes.
which is at the bottom of your screen right now, and go there. And if you would like to have, I know that our men at our church just really adored his testimony and what he had to say to the brother group. And I just want to close the program out to encourage you to go to his website, to read about Lewis's life, how you get the book, so you can read his life story, and pray that God may use him to come and minister, because you want to do that. You want to go out and do more of what God would have you do.
That's the reason.
That's what it's about.
That's what it's about.
And so this is really a launching. This is another launching pad for you, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so we want to encourage you today. I don't care where you are in your life. I don't care what you're going through. And just like this little boy, God can take a situation just like this and anoint a man such as you to touch people's lives. You see, all He wants is us to be willing to make a difference in somebody's life. Because it's up to God to bring that person. It's up to the Holy Spirit to draw that person. He just wants to know if we'll be available. And I want to thank you, Lewis, for being on the program today, for being available. We want you to go to his website and order his book. And if you've got a challenged child maybe, or maybe your own self is challenged, get this book and read it and let God do what He needs to do in your life. Remember, you make the difference. Christ in you really is the hope of glory. See you next week. Bye-bye now.